Hey, I'm Ryan, and I'm a professional sourdough baker.
That's a damn lie.
Fine, I just started making sourdough about a month ago. But what I found is that while I was searching for tutorials and videos and techniques and recipes and trying many of them, a lot of the times what they left out are the small details that you learn when you first start. So a month into my process, I'm gonna make a video. Maybe I can learn some things from you, and maybe you can learn a few things from me. So let's get started. I should note that I've already prepared my leaven, which is essentially taking my starter, his name is Frank, and adding whole wheat flour or unbleached all-purpose flour and then water, letting that sit until it doubles in size, which means that your starter is fed and ready to go. In another video, I'll show you how to start a starter, and then I'll show you this process of creating a leaven. But for now, let's assume that your leaven is ready to go and that you have your little apron on, and let's bake some bread.
If there's one thing I've learned on this sourdough journey is that there are so many different ways that you can do it. For this method, I'm gonna start by putting the leaven and the water together and incorporating that. Some other methods include mixing first your flour and your water and letting that sit for 30 minutes to overnight, and that's called an autolyse. Today, I'm just gonna start by mixing the leaven that I prepared last night and the water. So I've added my leaven to this bowl and I've put in 200 grams. I'm now adding 800 grams of water, which will give me an 80% hydration. You'll notice I'm measuring everything, and that's very important. Your water and your flour, if they're even off by a couple grams, can really affect your final product. And now it's time to incorporate your flour. Here I'm putting whole wheat flour. I'm using 215 grams, which is 27%. Whole wheat flour is gonna give your dough some strength. It sucks up more water than unbleached all-purpose, which is what I'm adding now. It's 785 grams for a total of 1,000 grams of flour. Now, again, there are a lot of different recipes that use different percentages of flour, and this is something I've played around with a lot. No matter what you use, it's time to incorporate that, but you're not working on building strength here, so just make sure that it's mixed, and then you're gonna cover it. All right, at this point, your leaven, your water, and your flour are mixed. First of all, I'm super proud of you. Second of all, let it sit for about 20 minutes, and then you're gonna take the top off and move on to salt. So I'm measuring out here 2%, which is 20 grams. Again, we're working with flour as our whole number, which is 1,000, so 2% is 20 grams. Give it a little spritz of water as I did there, and then mix that bad boy up until that salt is fully incorporated. You don't want to feel any more crystals as you're moving it around. And as you work the salt in, you're going to feel it change consistency. It's going to stiffen up a bit as the salt takes water away from the flour. Then let it sit for 30 minutes covered. At this point, you're going to begin bulk fermentation, which is going to help develop flavors and add a lot of air and bubbles inside of your dough. And these coil folds are pretty simple. I always have a little bowl of water next to me in order to keep the dough from sticking to my hands. And you're just going to release it gently from the sides of the bowl and fold it under itself. You'll do this a series of anywhere from 6 to 8 times, and then you're going to cover it and let it sit and give it another 30 minutes. You're going to do this a total of 4 times. You'll see the dough start to stiffen up, and it'll hold its shape as that ball, which is exactly what we want. Going into our third fold here, you're going to see that the dough doesn't stick to the sides of the bowl as much as it was in our first and second, nor is it really sticking to my hands. It's holding shape very well. So again, our third fold, we're going to cover it, let it sit for 30 minutes, and then come back for our fourth, and then let it sit for a full hour. And after a total of 3 hours, 4 folds, lots of happiness. You're going to pre-shape. So first flour your bench and then lightly help your dough out of the bowl a little bit calmer than I probably did it here, and divide your dough. You have enough here for 3 loaves, or you can make 2 bigger ones. I did 3 here. I'm going to show you 2 different techniques that will give you 2 different shapes of loaves in the end. This pre-shaping process is really just to suggest to your dough the shape that you want it to take. You don't want to overwork your dough too much here. Simply take in each side, and then on each other side, take in your corners like here. Maybe a little neater than I did. And then you're going to flip it over. Again, suggest that shape, and then you're just going to let these sit covered for 15 minutes. After a nice 15-minute rest, it's ready for final shaping. So this first one I'm going to do is a boule, which is just a circle. So I'm going to pull in all of the sides, and then I'm going to tuck it into itself and give it a couple good rolls before placing it in the basket. This next one is going to be a batard, which is more the shape of kind of a loaf, what you would think of. So again, each of the sides come in, cross over themselves, and then I'm going to roll that dough into itself. After you have it rolled into itself, you're going to seal each of the sides. So you'll essentially use the wet dough to stick it to itself, and that's going to trap the air inside like a balloon, which is exactly what we want, so that all that air can expand and give us a really good rise. So just tucking this a little bit, trying to be gentle with the dough, and then we're going to take our proofing basket, heavily flour, and flip the dough over, gently cradle it into the basket, and then cover them fully. I use plastic hairnets because they're reusable and relatively, well, very inexpensive. These proofing baskets can also be covered with towels. I've used pillowcases, whatever you need to be sure that there's some air getting through, but that it can come out of that basket. Your loaves are shaped, they're covered, and they're ready for proofing. So you can do this in the fridge for anywhere from 8 to 24 hours. Some people do 48. Or you can just proof this on the counter at room temperature. Morning, you ready to bake this bread? So by now your oven has been preheating at 500 degrees for at least a solid hour with the Dutch oven inside of it, so everything can get real hot. You're going to take your dough out of the refrigerator, and you're going to get your parchment paper. You're going to get flour. You can use rice flour or unbleached all-purpose for this. Start by tearing yourself a sheet, uncover your dough, and put cornmeal on the bottom. This is optional, but it helps it not stick to the parchment or to the Dutch oven if you're putting it directly inside. And then you're going to want to take your parchment paper, tuck it into that proofing basket, flip it over gently, and then allow it to kind of softly come out of that basket. A little water on the surface, and then you're going to use your flour, spreading it across the whole top of your loaf. Use a good amount here, because wherever you end up slicing, the bread is going to open up and expose kind of that middle brown, and then the outside is going to keep the color that you're putting here. And now you're ready to score your dough, which is one of my favorite and most frustrating parts. You're going to use a razor blade or a tool called a lame, which is just a razor blade on a stick like that, and you're just going to go for it. This is definitely one of those trial and error processes. You want to feel the dough, right? So as you do this more and more, you'll understand how much pressure you need to put on, or lack thereof, and understand that wherever you're cutting, the dough is going to spread to that place. You have a lot of air inside of this dough, so it's going to look for places to expand. So if you do big slices, it's going to focus really on that area because there's a lot of room for it to grow. Some bakers really prefer to do the scoring already inside of the Dutch oven, since really your dough is spreading the second you take it out of that proofing basket. So if you put it in the Dutch oven, the rise will happen as you score. Now is really where you want to focus on steam. So that's the point of the Dutch oven, is again to activate all of those bubbles, that water and that air inside of your loaf, to make it rise and make those bubbles burst, and therefore lifting your dough, spreading it, and all those beautiful scoring designs that you've made. So for me, I add a few ice cubes into the Dutch oven to be sure that steam starts hitting right away. So I make sure it hits the bottom of it, and then I cover it as fast as I can, trapping that steam inside and beginning the rise of my loaf. So I had placed that Dutch oven in my oven at 500 degrees, and it stayed in there for, I like to do 30 minutes with it covered. And sometime about 15 minutes in, I turn the oven down a little bit, maybe to 475 or 480, and let it kind of finish cooking at a lower temperature within that Dutch oven. So after 30 minutes, here we are. Got a nice rise. You can see where it's split, where we've scored it, and also it is getting slightly brown. So right now it's just a very light brown. We're gonna put it back into the oven now. We're gonna keep the top off the Dutch oven so that we can no longer incorporate steam. The rise will end after about 6 or 7 minutes really. And then the next part is about crisping and drying that crust as well as getting a really good deep brown color. We're almost there. We're gonna get this back in the oven for anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer, depending on how brown you want it. So some people like it almost charred. This one here is a nice golden brown. And you just made sourdough.
You guys, you did it. Or maybe you didn't do it. Maybe you burnt your bread. Maybe you overproofed it. Who knows? Maybe you dropped it on the floor. But either way, I bet you learned something. Every time that I mess up, that's when I figure things out. And I've messed up quite a few times.
Ain't that the truth?
Anyways, you did a great job, and I'm proud of you.
Okay, so you killed it.
We'll see you again here soon.